Edition of City Connection. It's the live call-in program where you, the citizens of Grand Rapids, can ask your mayor about local issues. I'm Linda Galash with Community Media Center, and Rosalynn Bliss, our mayor, is live in the studio to cover a number of city-related topics and to take your questions. Later in the show, we'll also welcome to GRTV Livewire studio Andy Guy from downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. DGRI is the organization. It's responsible for the city building and place management in the urban core of Grand Rapids. We'll look at the GR Forward plan, and we'll learn a little bit more about other initiatives and focuses here in the downtown district. And then you'll have an opportunity to take part in the program. We have live opportunities for you to call in, and you can ask your mayor questions. Here's how you get a hold of us, 616-459-4881. Email your questions as well at cityconnection@grcmc.org, or you can do this through Twitter. It's at GRTV Access. Facebook is the same. Facebook page is GRTV Access City Connection. Again, this is the June 4th edition of Community Media Center's GRTV Livewire Channel 24 City Connection. Mayor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks. It's good to be back.
We're deep in, well, I guess we're into summer now. It's finally here, and
Yes.
that means a lot of activity here in Grand Rapids, a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. In fact, it's really hard to fit it all in. And I was just looking at my schedule for this coming Saturday, and I have 4, maybe 5 events I'm going to try to swing by.
And
It's busy.
it's like that every weekend. Then we've got the Asian Festival.
I was going to just get
Loving
Asian
Day,
festivals
Pride
on the
Festival,
list.
and there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, but good stuff. You know, even this past weekend with festival, and you know, I love that our city is active and vibrant, and you can go to a place in the park. So one of the events this weekend is at Garfield Park, so I'll be over there for Kids and Lids, where we'll be giving out bike helmets to kids and free bike giveaway and talking about bike education to families. So you'll find lots of things going on in the neighborhoods, in parks, as well as downtown. There's a full slate of events downtown, from the festivals to Thursdays at Rosa Parks, and movies on Monroe are coming up, so a lot of good things.
Lots of good reasons to get outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's also that time of year when we're looking at some things like budget and some big timelines that happen, because this is the last month of the actual fiscal year, and we're looking to kick off a new year, July 1. First thing, though, is tomorrow night is it quarterly commission night out. It's at Harrison Park School.
Yes, so every quarter, so every 3 months, we take commission meeting out into the neighborhood. We call it Commission Night Out, and we rotate that between the 3 wards. And so yes, so tomorrow night is our second commission night out for the year, and so we'll be out and on the west side at Harrison Park School starting at 7. People can come early at 6, and there will be a bunch of city departments with tables and information, so if people just want to learn more, they can come a little bit early. The meeting will start right at 7 o'clock, and it's very similar to the meetings we have at City Hall. So we'll have public hearings. We'll also be voting on a number of issues, and we have a scheduled public hearing specifically, as you said, about the budget, which is really important.
So the annual budget, the fiscal year budget, so public hearing then tomorrow night at the City Commission meeting, and looking to adopt it a week later.
Yeah, so any amendments or changes we make will happen on June 12th before it's voted on and finalized. And very often we do end up making adjustments, either based on what we hear or just things that we want to see different. We've been meeting every single week as a full commission, and for about 3 to 4 hours every week in budget session, going through different parts of the budget. Our budget, if people aren't familiar, our budget is a $536 million budget. A significant portion of that is enterprise funds, meaning those are departments that are paid for with the fees for service, like our water department. So we all pay our water bill. That money goes directly to the water department and pays for that service. That's an enterprise fund. And then the general fund is just the general tax dollars that pays for other items that aren't in the enterprise funds, like police, fire, parks, economic development. That all falls in the general fund.
Okay.
So we spend a lot of time on the general fund. We spend a lot of time on the operational funds, and then we have a whole host of projects under capital that we also look at. So you know, I'll tell you 2 things about the budget. We have a lot of capital projects coming up, a lot of them around streets. So we're investing about $17 million this year in streets. So you're starting to see all the construction cones coming up and detours, and I just ask people for a little bit of patience.
One of my worst intersections is at 3 Mile, as you turn off at 3 Mile, and it was fixed this past week, at least patched, so that's great.
Good, and yes, please call in 311 if you see potholes. We're out doing both pothole filling and maintenance, as well as larger reconstruction. A big ticket item that we're talking about is our street lights. So that would be a $20 million project that we would bond for. And it's not just to replace the lights, but it's to replace all of the underground wiring and the street light poles, the concrete that holds the poles, as well as the street lights. And a part of that would be converting our street lights to LED lights. So that is one of the proposals before us. We've been talking about it for years. The problem is getting to such a massive scale. We're having so many failures with our street lights that we have to do something. It's infrastructure, it's our responsibility to fix it. There's public safety issues when you don't have appropriate lighting. And so that's one of the big ticket items we're looking at for capital this year. And then last, about the budget, this year we partnered with Citizen Lab again, and so there is a website created by Citizen Lab, which is part of the West Michigan Brigade. So it's a group of folks who are really techie and smart, and they have taken the city budget and they've created a website that breaks it down in a really nice, usable format. It has charts and graphs, and you can click on items if you're interested in, and it'll take you to additional information. It captures all of our revenue sources as well as expenditures. And then it breaks down general fund from enterprise fund and capital and operations. And it's just a really great website. It's through our open data portal, so we provide them with all of the data. Then they take that and they put it in a format that is really user friendly. So I've been encouraging people, if they're interested in the budget and getting more detail, rather than reading, a 300 and some page document that's full of lots of numbers, the Citizen Lab site is fabulous.
So that site, if anybody wants to prepare for tomorrow night's hearing.
It's a great site for that. And I have it posted on my Facebook page. I've posted it a couple times on Twitter.
Does it link off the city site as well?
I've spent a lot of time on it, and I don't believe it links directly to. It takes the information and it will tell you where they got the information from.
And then what is the web address?
It is, I will get it for you.
Sounds good.
Before the end of the show, I'll make sure that you have it.
Perfect. So budget time is one of the things happening, but also we have another deadline coming up on that adoption day for the budget, which is June 12th. It's also the last day for Commissioner Allen. We talked a little bit about a possible temporary solution at the last city connection meeting, and that was to appoint possibly previous Commissioner Jim White, who had term limited out, but therefore is not seeking the seat.
Yeah, so as you said, Commissioner Allen's last day is on Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, so June 12th. Per charter, we can't appoint a commissioner to replace him until his seat is technically vacant, so we won't be able to move forward on an appointment until Commissioner Allen is done. And we're still looking at the possibility of appointing Commissioner White. So we've talked about it publicly a couple times. We're taking input, answering questions, meeting with residents. Commissioner Lanier has had a number of conversations in the 3rd Ward about why this is a recommendation that we're bringing forward. And I think I talked about this last time. It's really, there's a number of reasons. And as concerns were brought to our attention about having this vacancy for roughly 15, 16 months, how do you have somebody jump in, have the knowledge to hit the ground running, but also not create a disadvantage in next year's election? So we are going to be, 7 months from now, people are going to be filing their petitions to run for that seat. And so how do you eliminate giving somebody a leg up, which is a pretty significant concern we've heard from the community. That we want, one person actually said to me, this should be an appointment, not an anointment. And that the people in a ward should have the ability and the right to vote. And I wish we could call a special election. Currently, we don't have that authority to do that. It's something maybe down the road we'll be able to do. But even that is tricky because our elections are in an odd year, and this is an even year. So you would get caught up in all of the partisan elections, but we're nonpartisan. So there's just a lot of nuances to it. And so we're trying to figure out what is best for the community, for our city at this moment in time. how do we identify somebody that has the knowledge to do the job in an interim position? I mean, truly for 16 months, and that's why Commissioner White was recommended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as we talk a little bit about how nice and how summer-like it is outside, you mentioned right before we went on air, it's almost time for the pools to open in the parks, and there's been a number of park enhancements and reopening. So tell a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, it is exciting. We're doing a lot of work in parks. This year we're investing another $4 million in parks throughout the city. We've had a number of groundbreakings, but we've also had a number of openings. So we have parks that we started working on that are now available this year, and the work has been done and the capital improvement has been done. Our city parks, or pools I should say, the 3 MLK and Briggs and Riverside.
Okay.
Almost. Those 3 pools will be opening, or Richmond. So Richmond Park, Briggs Park, and MLK Park will be opening, but then also all of the splash pads will be opening. And they'll be open all summer long, all the way up until the kids go back to school. Although I just heard that kids are going back to school early this year, in August.
Wow.
Yeah, so they'll be open until then.
Okay.
And so get out into the parks and enjoy those pools. That's what they're there for.
All right. A couple of things I just read about. I want you to tell me a little bit about it. But 6 city buildings have earned the EPA Energy Star rating. I'm sure that was a very deliberate goal. And tell a little bit about what that means and what other of those kinds of enhancements. You talked about the street lights going LED. What else is happening?
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening, and thank you for bringing that up. So we have an Energy Advisory Council that I actually created about 3 months ago. And through the process, what we're doing is we're identifying really concrete things we can do to reduce our energy usage. Our goal is to get to 100% renewable energy. But the very first thing we want to do is we want to look at all the ways that we can reduce our energy consumption. And that is what we've been actively doing in all of our city buildings. And so we're really proud to have 6 of our buildings certified under Energy Star. But in addition to that, we're moving forward on the biodigester. And one thing on our agenda tomorrow, which is really exciting, is that initially when the biodigester project started moving forward and we decided to invest money at the wastewater treatment facility to take waste and turn it into energy through a biodigester, turns it into methane that can be converted to electricity. We, in the meantime, were approached by DTE to work in partnership with them to take the energy from the biodigester and turn it into renewable natural gas, which is a cleaner fuel. And our buses at the Rapid, we are converting to CNG. So we'll be able to create renewable natural gas that can be used right here in vehicles locally, which dramatically reduces air pollution compared to other fuels. So we're going to do a partnership to create RNG, renewable natural gas, from the biodigester, but then we'll also use a portion of that to get to our renewable energy. So it'll kind of be a twofold project. So that's an exciting project. And then we're also doing feasibility and some studies right now to look at adding solar, both at the Lake Michigan filtration plant and wastewater treatment facility, as well as Butterworth landfill, and potentially even on our parking ramps. So Michigan State did that about a year ago. They added solar to their parking ramps and increased their on-site generation. So they're generating energy that they're using on site. So we're looking at all of those options as well, and we're coming up with a plan to get to that goal of 100% renewable energy by 2025.
Wow. So on a similar vein of less of an impact on our environment, it was recently Bike to Work Day, and it's coming up to Active Commute Week. You participated in Bike to Work Day.
I did. It was great fun. I don't typically bike to work, and so it was fun. I live over in Fulton Heights area, and so I rode and met up with a whole group of folks who were biking to work at Fulton Street Farmers Market, and then we rode down to City Hall, and it was great. It was
uphill on the way back, though.
It was uphill, yes. But it was great. And a couple days before that was the Ride of Silence. So I rode in that as well.
Okay.
Which, is surreal and sad, but also important to pause and think about the people who've lost their lives and have been injured. So we did that route. We met at 6th Street Bridge, and then we rode out to John Ball. And it was a great group, a huge group of folks. We all rode together. And then when we got to the zoo, there was a gentleman there playing the bagpipes, so we paused and remembered those who have been injured, who have lost their lives cycling, and then we rode back. And so that was last month. And then, yeah, active commute, encouraging people to get out and try it. And if you haven't commuted to work, we encourage you to try and see what it's like, and even integrate that into your work week if you can. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but it might work for some.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just going through the list of dates, but we're coming up on the deadline for, again, seeking applicants for the city manager position.
Yes.
Do you have any updates on that, or do you know nothing until that date comes?
Yeah, so I know applications are coming in.
Okay.
I get an update from the consultant that we're working with every couple weeks, and he is actively talking to people and answering questions and recruiting, and he said he feels really good about our candidate pool, so we'll see. I think that's up for one's own interpretation, but I'm hopeful. So that will be open until June 13th, and then we'll be meeting a subcommittee of the City Commission. We'll be meeting and working through a process for the first round interviews, stakeholder meetings, community forum, and second round interviews. My hope is that we have that nailed down probably by like the week of June 20th. And then we'll identify, out of all the applicants who applied, we'll determine which ones we want to move forward for first round interviews. And then we'll make that public, and then we'll move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're about a quarter after the hour, and it's time for us to take a break. When we come back, Mayor Bliss will be speaking with Andy Guy. He's with Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. We're going to learn quite a bit about the GR Forward plan and a lot of other things. We'll be right back after this break.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
Anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
Community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
right, thank you. So glad to be back. With us today, we have Andy Guy from Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. So we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the great work DGRI is doing, as well as give an update on the work of the Grand Rapids Forward Plan. DGRI is pretty aggressive about not just having this plan sit on the shelf, but actually having a really firm implementation plan. We can talk a little bit about the structure. I think a lot of people don't fully understand DGRI and the DDA and the DID, so maybe we can put some context to that.
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll talk about this summer and projects too that we're working on, but also what people can expect downtown.
Sounds great.
All right, and we can answer the question, why did movies in the park move to movies on Monroe?
We can answer that question, yes.
Okay, good. So let's just start with Andy Guy. You've been with DGRI now for?
I've been there almost 4 years.
4 years.
Longtime resident of Grand Rapids, live up in Belknap Hill. I'm a second ward resident. And I have 2 little girls who are bouncing off the walls to get out of school, GRPS. And they're going to be annoyed about going back early when August comes back around. So
Did you hear that?
I did.
Yeah.
They've telling me about it every day.
Yeah. So, so you've been with DGRI. You wear a lot of hats there. But one thing that you've worked on during your time there is GR Forward Plan and implementation. You want to, for people who aren't familiar with GR Forward Plan, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I came on board with the organization right when we were in the middle of that plan and heading towards the City Commission consideration process and ultimately approval. You all adopted it in late 2015, December 2015, and essentially what it is a master plan to guide the next generation of growth in downtown Grand Rapids. We hadn't had a plan since about the since about 1990, 91. So it was time for an update, and GR Forward really lays out 6 goals for downtown for the next 10 or so years. The first goal is really thinking about our river corridor, revitalizing the river corridor and really making that the central amenity for downtown Grand Rapids. Goal 2 is all about developing a true downtown neighborhood, focusing on growth of residential population, but also the retail services that residents and other folks want in a good, vibrant neighborhood. Goal 3 is all about transportation options and implementing a 21st century mobility strategy. Goal 4 is about economic development, strengthening jobs in the downtown economy, particularly as it relates to local minority and women-owned businesses. Goal 5, and I'm going to get through all 6 of them.
Good. This is
Goal
impressive.
5 is about reinvesting in public spaces, parks, some of which you were just talking about in the earlier segment. And then Goal 6, which is really unusual for this type of a planning document, is a really strong emphasis on making sure that our public schools are in a good, healthy position in downtown to be able to serve the residents that we expect to move into downtown and that are moving there right now.
Yeah, and DGRI has been very supportive of Museum School.
Yes.
And so that's
Yes.
been a hallmark of our work.
Yes, we are very enthusiastically anticipating the opening of the old public museum for school next year. So kudos to Superintendent Neal and GRPS for moving that project forward.
Yeah, that's a great project. So, so we're going to come back to GR Forward in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about DGRI and DDA and DID. So for people who aren't familiar with the structure and what it is, I know I often respond to questions and I explain that the DDA is a tax increment finance authority, and that's how they get their funds, and the DID is a special assessment. But why don't we talk a little bit about the structure, because it can be confusing. I think some people think that DGRI is part of the city. It's not. It's an independent nonprofit organization. So I'll let you explain it.
You just answered the question. So Downtown Grand Rapids Inc. is an independent nonprofit organization. We were established about almost 5 years ago now, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And really organized with a lot of community input to really take the leadership in the management of the Downtown Development Authority, which is a tax increment tool, the Downtown Improvement District, which is an assessment that private property owners voluntarily pay to do a lot of the clean and green stuff in downtown. And then we also manage the Monroe North Tax Increment Finance Authority, which is another tax increment tool that focuses on the Monroe North neighborhood. So those organizations used to operate independently of each other. One of our board's main goals was to bring them all under one umbrella to streamline the operations, think more strategically across all the investments, oftentimes focused on similar goals, and making sure that those tools that are financed by public and taxpayer dollars are delivering the most benefit and highest impact that they can for the betterment of the community.
Yeah. So for folks who aren't familiar with special assessments or TIFs,
Yeah.
so a special assessment is a assessment people pay on their property tax that they vote on. So it's an additional assessment that they are willing to pay in order to pool all that money together to do things like the beautification. So that is largely through the Downtown Improvement District.
Yep.
That's a special assessment, and it largely goes to cleaning. So the people you see moving around downtown cleaning, the flowers, the Christmas lights at Christmas time,
Yep.
to support a lot of the PR and marketing of events. A lot of that falls under the umbrella of the DID, or is paid for by the DID.
Correct. I'd add
Yeah.
two things: the downtown ambassadors,
Yeah.
who are the helpful
right.
hands you see on the sidewalks downtown with directions or changing a tire or carrying an umbrella if it's raining. Anything you need, they're available for sort of a concierge on the sidewalk. And then also the DID carries the cost of providing some of the snow melt
that's right.
around downtown and making sure that the sidewalks are safe and easily passable, certainly in the wintertime.
Yeah. So that's that piece.
Yep.
And then you have the Monroe TIFA and the DDA, which is also a TIF, so tax increment finance. You want to explain that to folks, what that
I
means?
need a picture. Can we draw
I
a
know,
picture
I wish
of this?
I know, I should have brought a picture.
So basically, the tax increment finance is that as properties rise, the DDA takes the small increment in the rise in those property values and reinvests it back into downtown. So a lot of the things that we're talking about, the improvements, and then trying to achieve that sort of virtuous cycle of using the growing property taxes to continuously improve downtown and continue the rise in the property values and the value of downtown overall.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is that you're taking the property tax increase that largely comes from people who are investing in the downtown, and you're capturing that and you're reinvesting it locally. And that is exactly how quarter improvement districts also collect their dollars. So you see the smaller quarter improvement districts like Uptown or North Quarter or West Side SID. Right now we're in the process of doing a plan for the Southtown SID. Yep. That is the same mechanism. So they have a base of what the property value is, and then any incremental increase they're able to capture and invest right back locally into that very district. So you're keeping those dollars local.
And what's exciting about that is that the Grand Rapids Downtown Development Authority was in the same place that a lot of the corridor improvement districts were back in 1981 or 2.
Yeah.
So those tools take time to mature and grow, but with good management and a good focus on community priorities, they return a lot of value to the community, as we're seeing in downtown right now.
Yeah. So real quick, we have, going back to, just have a couple more minutes before we take a break. In the GR Forward plan, there's a lot of hopes around activation and creating a vibrant downtown.
Yeah.
And so we're coming up into the summer, and we have lots of events. You want to touch on what people can expect downtown this summer?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we're really excited about right now is Calder Plaza. We're about to roll out, hopefully if the delivery truck gets here soon, some new furniture and greenery in Calder Plaza. Also umbrellas. One thing we've heard is folks really want a lot of shade out there, so we're going to be putting that stuff out here in the next month or so. We're also going to be kicking off a design process for the first major phase of the renovation of Calder Plaza, and that's the pavilion on the southeast corner. We're also going to be focused on putting out some new transit stops, shelters, consolidating, but also then rolling out new transit stops or stations, for the bus stops and dash stops throughout downtown. What else are we doing? We're organizing a downtown resident network that will help give voice to the growing number of residents in downtown, but also focus on coordination across the near downtown neighborhoods. And then Movies on Monroe. We have moved Movies in the Park from Anabawan over to the Monroe North neighborhood to help support some experimentation and public space activation along the river up in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and I know I've seen lots of folks out there working on it, and what I have responded when people are unhappy about the change, I've said, well, let's just try it and see, and give us a little time to transform that space, and you may be surprised.
Thank you for saying that. We certainly support or appreciate all the love that folks have for Nabuan Park. At the same time, it's a highly manicured space that has a lot of things going on in it. And our job is to get out on the edges and experiment in new and underutilized spaces. And when the city completed the acquisition of that site, we felt it was ripe for making it a better place for people, or at least experimenting with how we can make it a better place for people along the riverfront there.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect way to end. We can talk more about it in the next segment. And so we'll wrap up and we'll take a break.
How do you build a greener city? Meet Mariah. Mariah cares about the environment in her neighborhood and wants to get the word out about an upcoming tree planting event at Congress School, organized by Friends of Grand Rapids Parks and Brewery Vivant. She knows thousands of people will find out about it if she publishes the story on the Rapidian. Meet John. John cares about the environment, but doesn't know what he can do locally to help. John's friends recommends he check the Rapidian for local events. John, like many other volunteers, finds Mariah's article and decides to go. Together, John, Mariah, Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and Brewery Vivant help plant trees at their local neighborhood school playground. Community grows, beers are shared, a greener city is built.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
Anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
A community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm Linda Glash in the studio with Mayor Rosalynn Bliss and with DGRI Andy Guy, having a great conversation about what's going on with Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. And you were talking a bit about GR Forward. I didn't know if you finished with that because there's a lot to be said about that. Did you get to cover everything you wanted to on that?
Well, you know, since we've adopted, I was doing some math today, we've implemented about probably around 40 different initiatives. So we could be here all day talking about it, but we have been busy getting some stuff done. I think we talked about some of the things that I'm excited about. One that I didn't mention that we're also very excited about is the opening of the Meyer right down the street here. You know, one of the most consistent things we heard through that process was the need for grocery amenities in the downtown area, and we're glad to see that investment's happening in such a great way on the near west side here.
You know, as you bring up some of the development on the west side, which has just been happening so rapidly, it makes me ask, what is the downtown district? It does come to the west side, doesn't it?
We answer this question often, and it changes with whoever you ask or you know, where people think it is. You know, we tend to think of it as a mile radius from the center point of the city, which is Division and Fulton Street. And that puts us right here on the near west side. It puts us right to about the intersection of Bridge and Sheldon, or Seward. So that's typically how we think of downtown. But you know, as more and new people are moving in, a lot of different people have different concepts of what they think downtown is.
When you're capturing some of that tax money, though, it's very specific, is it not?
Yes. So yeah, that 1 mile radius is certainly not the boundaries of some of the tools that we were talking about in the earlier segment, like the Downtown Development Authority and the Downtown Improvement District. Yeah, they're much different shapes, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the change of movies in the park, going to Monroe, is there the possibility, and you said let's watch and see, is there a possibility it's going to visit other little areas?
Well, I guess we've moved it once, and we didn't think how possible that might be. So I guess anything's is possible. I think we're really interested to get busy experimenting in this space and seeing what works. You know, this location, certainly after the reconstruction of the Whitewater Rapids, is going to be the central gathering place in this city. That is where you will go to watch the rapids, watch people in the rapids, and really have an interaction and a physical connection with that river. So this is going to be a very important public space. It's going to take a while to realize that vision, so we have some time right now to experiment with a lot of different things and see how they work in that area before we make significant investments in a real public space, permanent public space.
Okay.
Yeah. We should add one thing we didn't talk about, which I'm really proud of at DGRI, is the creation of the alliances.
Yeah.
So, we can talk about that. So what DGRI did after GR Forward was they created 3 different alliances, really robust alliances, made up of citizens to help inform not just decision making and where dollars should be spent, but also to really be a part of how do we make sure there's accountability with the implementation of the GR Forward plan. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, well, those 3 alliances are now 5 alliances.
Oh, that's right. We increased them
to align with the goals of GR
That's
Forward.
right.
Goal 6 is Grand Rapids Public Schools, and they are taking care of that on their own and doing a great job. So we have reorganized those alliances around the 5 goals to really shepherd implementation of each one of those goals. We are a community-driven organization. Those alliances vet just about everything we do. I just had a meeting today talking about a new street food initiative that we're working on, and that group was reviewing the concepts, reviewing the proposals, and really helping answer questions as we start to take it higher up in our organization to, maybe you'll see it next week at the DDA. Those alliances combined, they helped guide and ultimately approve about 95% of the budget for us in fiscal year 2019. So citizens are on the front lines of everything we're doing.
Yeah, it's
You
exciting
mentioned
work.
the schools and their role in it, and that's very closely connected in some ways with the Restore the Rapids project. Talk a little bit, I think Mayor saw something that you were involved with, welcoming some students to, was it part of the Restore the Rapids project where the schools are involved there, or you were doing something with the students?
Oh, where I was canoeing with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is actually part of the Connecting Children to Nature initiative that I've been working on in partnership with Grand Rapids Public Schools and with Superintendent Neal for a couple years now. And we did it last year, and then this year we received a grant from the Wege Foundation. And so this year, you're right, it was just a couple weeks ago at Riverside Park. We had every single 8th grader from Grand Rapids Public Schools, so about 1,100 kids, through the course of a week, get in a canoe and go paddling out on the Grand River. And so on Monday morning, I joined a group of 8th graders and went out on the river with them, and it was great fun. And it was shocking to me how many young people had never been on a canoe before, never been in the water. And so there's a real opportunity to expand experiences, but also send the message that these parks, these public spaces, this river belongs to you. And there's a lot of different ways that you can interact with it in a really safe way.
I imagine that's going to change a lot as this river becomes the focus again.
Yeah.
Andy, I was really taken when you were taking off the goals, and you had them pretty close to the top of your head, but these are not consecutive, correct? I mean, things are simultaneously happening.
Yeah, correct. There's a lot going on in each one of those. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 in the book, but those are just the chapters. Although I do think, to the mayor's point, that the river does occupy a special place right now, I think, in our community's ambition, and as you just discussed, certainly increasing public access to that resource, and really turning our community back around to that river and using it for the amenity that it can be in the 21st century.
Okay. Yeah. And what we may want to touch on, and you talked about this a little bit, and it's one of the chapters is around mobility. So Andy also serves on the board of the Rapid, and he's one of the City of Grand Rapids appointees. And DGRI has been at the table with our mobility department and the Rapid, really looking at how do we rethink the Dash. There's a process going on right now to rebrand the Dash, and then also Andy was involved in the plan for the Silver Line, where if you get on the Silver Line on Wealthy or ride it downtown, you don't have to pay. There's no fee for that. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about mobility.
Yeah, I think goal 3 is the area that we've been the most active in implementation, and that's thankful to the city's leadership in reorganizing their transportation initiatives under the mobile GR department, and a lot of the good work that Josh Naramore and his team has done. All the things that you mentioned, we will reboot the Dash again this summer with a little bit different routing. We changed it a couple of years ago, but have learned a little bit more as travel patterns change, how that can be more effective for people. One thing we accomplished last year was the business planning effort for the bike share system. We are currently, I know the city is working on a bike plan, we're waiting to wrap that up, but we really hope to get into pre-development efforts on a bike share system for the central city, probably sometime this year, looking towards 2019 to hopefully launch something like that. And then one other thing that I should mention is I think pedestrian safety improvements have become a very high priority for downtown. If you go up and down Division right now, the city and DGRI just kicked off a lot of improvements that are happening there. We're going to test a new bike lane on Division Avenue this summer. A lot of the stuff you're going to see on the streets and sidewalks this summer, construction-wise, is really focused around increasing pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, and making downtown a place for a lot of different mobility options that people can use.
So the recent change is that the ordinance is now that if somebody is about to step into an intersection or is in a crossing area, that it's the priority, it's the pedestrian priority. And I'm starting to see a little bit of some of those green fluorescent signs at some of them. Where are those to be? Is it just starting, and maybe I saw it on Wealthy Street, but where are they all going to be?
Yeah, I don't have the map in front of me, but it will be throughout the city. and in the downtown area, we're working really specifically with DGRI. But it is our goal is to get to a place where we have 0 injuries or deaths of pedestrians in our city. And it's an education. It's education for pedestrians, to talk to them about crosswalks and how do you use them, making sure that we have crosswalks in the most appropriate place, that we have ADA compliance. I think a perfect example is right here on Bridge. We need to have crosswalks on either side of the bridge, there by the post office and in front of Bridgewater. We know people cross there often, and we had a horrible tragic death recently of a little girl on Bridge. And so we know that there are spots in the city that we need to add crosswalks, and then we need to educate folks who are walking where to walk safely, but then also people who are driving cars to stop at crosswalks. That it's not yield, the expectation is to stop, but also to slow down when you're in the heart of downtown or out in the neighborhoods. We're going to be working with our police department to make sure that we're enforcing speed limits, but also that people are stopping at crosswalks.
Okay, and to end on a positive note for sure, yes. Not that isn't, but Andy, you were sounding pretty exciting about some of the Calder Plaza type things, and one thing about DGRI is things happen. It's not talked about for forever, but things happen. So the first thing is some tables and green space down in that corner?
Yeah, things happen, but they don't happen without partnership, and we have a lot of great partners, and as it relates to Calder Plaza, certainly the city and the county, Kent County has been at the table and very helpful and supportive of some of the changes that the community wants to see. So yes, we're going to take another incremental step in improving that public space this summer with new furniture, greenery, and umbrellas. We have been working with the Grand Rapids Food Truck Association to put more street food out there during the week. It was 1 day a week last year. It's 3 this summer, and we're looking to grow that as people get more and more used to getting comfortable and having food at Calder Plaza. And really just trying to slowly, incrementally change that while we work on some bigger picture investments like the pavilion I talked about. Our hope is to be able to break ground on some sort of a statement project for phase 1 around the anniversary for the plaza and the installation of the Calder next year. So more to come on that.
Yeah, so next year is the 50th anniversary of La Grand Baptiste.
A great time to do the initiative. Great. Well, Andy Guy with Downtown Grand Rapids Inc., thanks for joining us on City Connection. We're going to take a quick break here.
How do you build a greener city? Meet Mariah. Mariah cares about the environment in her neighborhood and wants to get the word out about an upcoming tree planting event at Congress School, organized by Friends of Grand Rapids Parks and Brewery Vivant. She knows thousands of people will find out about it if she publishes the story on the Rapidian. Meet John. John cares about the environment, but doesn't know what he can do locally to help. John's friends recommends he check the Rapidian for local events. John, like many other volunteers, finds Mariah's article and decides to go. Together, John, Mariah, Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and Brewery Vivant help plant trees at their local neighborhood school playground. Community grows, beers are shared, a greener city is built.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm Linda Glash with Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, and I want to say thanks to Andy Guy with Downtown Grand Rapids Inc. joining us. So now's our time to kind of dig in a little bit deeper and even take questions for the mayor, but we've got a few things to talk about to start with. First off, you promised a website for everybody that maybe wanted to prep for the public hearing on the budget and just get some more information on the budgets that are being proposed that will be maybe adopted next week with some changes.
Yes, so thank you for giving me a chance to look that up. It's if you're interested in going to that, it's grbudget.citizenslab.org.
I think it's Citizen Labs.
Citizen Labs, yep.
.org.
.org.
Yep. If we got, it's one of those.
Yep. grbudget.citizenlabs.org.
And then again, so that's for tomorrow night. There'll be a public hearing on the budget as part of the City Commission meeting out at Harrison Park School. All right, a couple things we can talk about right away is first, redevelopment ready community. This is now a designation for Grand Rapids. What is that?
So, so this is a program that comes out of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. So we work really closely with MEDC. So Michigan Economic Development Corporation is MEDC. It's a state organization. And they're the organization that we work with whenever we use economic development tools. So any recommendation of an economic development tool has to be approved by the state. So when we make a recommendation, let's say for a brownfield, that has to go to the state and be approved. MEDC is who we work with. So they're really strong partners with us in a lot of projects, really throughout the city. And so about 2 years ago, they came up with a plan and told every single city that if you are going to work with us in the future, you need to be a redevelopment ready community, meaning you have to go through an internal assessment process and you need to identify areas that you're doing well and areas you need to improve. And they have, it's pretty much like an audit almost, but it's an assessment. Then you have to submit a significant amount of documentation to them, and then they will certify you as a redevelopment ready community, or they'll tell you you have more work to do in these areas before we will certify you. So they launched that about 2 years ago, and cities throughout the state have started working on going through the process to be certified as a redevelopment ready community. So we started actually about a year ago. Because it's pretty time intensive, and we were just certified 2 weeks ago by MEDC as a certified redevelopment ready community.
And was that part self-analysis as well then?
Yeah, part of it is a self-analysis, a part of it is going through our policies and procedures, and then we submit that to them to review, and then and it was a lot of back and forth as well.
Okay. So what were some areas identified as where we're going to work on for growth?
Yeah, so we found the report was really quite positive, and we've done a lot of work, especially this last year, to be more transparent and open and have information available for anyone who wants to do business in the city. So through our design department, we put a lot of things online. We have permits online. People can go, like in my neighborhood, if there is a project, I can go online now and pull it up and I can see where it is. So they really praised us for that work, making sure that information is readily available, both as a resident but also for business owners or even developers. So that got a lot of attention, positive attention in the report. The other thing we're talking about internally is that we're going to embark on a strategic plan for economic development, which we haven't done in our city. So it's actually in the budget this year to allocate funds for our economic development department to look at a long-term strategic plan for economic development. And so we'll be working on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we do have a question in,
Sure.
and this, I believe, has to do with gerrymandering. And it says, this is from Carol, who noticed your name on a list of endorsements for the ballot proposal that would establish an independent redistricting effort in the state of Michigan. So it says, please ask you why you support Voters Not Politicians initiative.
Yeah. So as an elected official, I often get asked to weigh in on lots of policies and procedures, but also ballot initiatives, and then candidates often will ask me to endorse them. And so this year we have a lot coming at us. At the state level, one of them is this initiative. I, for a very long time, have actually probably since I was first elected in 2005, I've been pretty public that I think gerrymandering is detrimental to the democratic process. I think when you have the party in power drawing lines, that's problematic when they can stack the deck and create districts that are either heavily Democratic or lean towards being a Democratic district or a Republican district. And what that, in my opinion, has resulted in is that we get these gerrymandered districts that make no sense, no rhyme and reason. Sometimes they're all over the place and they barely make any sense. And then what happens is you don't really have the opportunity to decide between a Republican and a Democrat, because it's so heavily weighted towards one party that the election tends to be the primary. And very often in primaries, you will often get a candidate that is pretty extreme if that's the only election for that district. And so states across this country are looking at gerrymandering and looking at some of these districts that have been drawn that clearly are stacked against having this competitive race between two different parties, and we are a two-party system. People should have that opportunity. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter. There are parts of our state that are heavily Democratic or heavily Republican, and regardless of how you draw the lines, it doesn't have an impact. But when you're in an urban area and lines are drawn in a certain way to either shift where the city, where the districts are in a city, it can really make a pretty significant difference. And so that's why I signed on and pretty publicly saying that there's a better way to redistrict, and it should be more objective. Lots of states have looked at this, and I think there's a better way to do it.
Okay, thanks for answering that. We had mentioned off air a little bit about the Affordable Housing Fund, and there's a little bit you want to say about that?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work around housing, even though it doesn't seem nearly fast enough, because I know this is an urgent issue for so many people in our community. But one thing we're moving forward on is the establishment of a board of individuals who are appointed to oversee the Affordable Housing Fund. So this is a fund that will fall under our Grand Rapids Housing Commission. It's funds that we'll be allocating money to, and then hopefully we'll be able to raise money as well. The goal is to eventually get the fund to be about $10 million, and then those funds will support affordable housing projects, and we don't know what those are going to look like yet, because the board will be able to create the bylaws and the process and eligibility and make recommendations. But how that board is set up under the housing fund is that it'll be an independent nonprofit, and there will be 4 individuals appointed by the city, 4 appointed by the Housing Commission, and then 1 joint appointee. So those 9 members will oversee the fund, and then there will be a larger, much larger and more diverse advisory committee that falls under the board. So we're in the process of setting that up. Carlos from the Housing Commission was at our last City Commission meeting, and we'll be moving forward on those appointments hopefully within the next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of your priorities you stated when you became mayor, and as you were running for mayor. So it's actually it's in the works, and it's happening, and efforts are in place for sure.
Yeah, and the zoning, we talked about this last time. Zoning, we're going through a process with public agency. We're going to get some more community input on that over the next 90 days, and then we'll also be moving forward with starting to update our master plan. So some of the more concerning issues that came out of the zoning recommendations, largely the recommendations about special land use, many of those decisions will actually go and become a part of the updating of the master plan.
Okay. Well, with about a minute and a half to go, we have another question.
Okay.
I'm going to leave the last few seconds for you to tell us where you're going after this show. It says, at Festival this weekend, I noticed there was a new parking lot being built. Is there going to be another Ellis lot? Is that what it is?
So the lot at 50 Ottawa, which is I'm assuming the one that they're talking about, that was an Ellis lot. So that's the lot right across from Sundance Grill, right across from the courthouse. That asphalt parking lot was an Ellis lot, and Ellis is a partner in that project, and so that will be an Ellis lot. And then the area 4 and 5, so the parking lot that's being built over behind the Van Andel, that will be a private parking lot owned by the Lokes, but the city will lease 300 public spaces out of that. Okay.
And then the last thing is, you're heading off to a fairly important meeting tonight as you leave here. Lead poisoning is the topic.
Yeah, so that's another huge priority for me, and in the next 2 weeks I'll be appointing a lead-free advisory council, and there's been a lot of work. So I am leaving here to go have a conversation about lead poisoning. There's been a lot of work around this topic. The state has done some commissions, the county just recently did a report, and now we're taking that information and we're going to work really aggressively at the city to identify what we can do to implement some of those recommendations, but also to look at what we're doing and what we can do better.
Great. Yeah. Mayor Bliss, thanks for another great show. This is closing out the June edition of City Connection here on GRTV Livewire Channel 24. I'm Linda Galash with Community Media Center.